The sun of Veratus Prime was slowly sinking behind the tall crystal towers, turning the sky into shades of blue, gold, and violet. The royal citadel stood in the center of the capital like a shining mountain made of glass and metal, its walls glowing softly as night approached. It was a place known for quiet beauty, peaceful halls, and the gentle music of floating lanterns. No one imagined that such a peaceful evening could become the darkest moment in the planet's history. Inside the citadel, the air carried the calm scent of flowering dust vines, and the long corridors shimmered with soft blue lights. Empress Jaira walked through her private garden chamber, her silver robes trailing behind her like a moving stream of light. She was calm, collected, and confident as always. Her people saw her as a symbol of grace and order. The Alreni Dominion had known peace for almost 2 centuries, and Jaira believed that peace would continue. But Sergeant Marcus Hale, the only human assigned to the palace as part of an exchange security program, never trusted quiet days. Humans had grown up in a galaxy that rarely stayed peaceful for long. He moved through the guard stations doing routine checks, boots thumping softly against the polished floor, helmet under his arm. His armor was scratched, slightly worn, and not nearly as beautiful as the sleek gear the Alreni guards wore. But it was practical, strong, and built to survive real battles. Marcus had been on Verithis for only 4 months, but he already understood that Alreni society was sheltered, elegant, and unused to violence. The Empress's guards were tall, graceful, and perfectly trained to stand straight for hours, yet Marcus doubted they had ever seen a real war. Still, he kept those thoughts to himself. He was just a guest in the Dominion. As he checked the communications panel, he noticed a strange flicker in the security feeds. The outer perimeter sensors went dark for a moment, long enough to make Marcus frown. He tapped the screen, but it showed nothing unusual afterward. Still, an uneasy feeling crawled up his spine. Humans called it gut instinct. It was something his instructors taught him to respect. He straightened, put his helmet back on, and ran another sweep of the perimeter with his visor. Everything seemed normal. Lanterns drifting in the gardens, guards moving in slow, smooth patterns, servants carrying trays of glowing fruit. Nothing wrong at all, but instinct refused to let him relax. He turned toward the west balcony and tapped his wrist comm. "Control, this is Sergeant Hale. I'm picking up minor sensor disruptions on the outer range. Anything on your end?" Control answered with the usual calm voice of an Alreni operator. "Negative, Sergeant. All networks read stable. Perhaps atmospheric static." Atmospheric static rarely hit in perfect pulses like the one Marcus saw. But before he could argue, the lights above him flickered once, twice, and then a shockwave shook the entire citadel. The floor trembled beneath his boots. Crystal tiles cracked. Somewhere distant, something exploded, sending a deep echo through the halls. Marcus didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward the sound, armor plates locking smoothly as he pulled his rifle from his back. The alarms had not even begun to ring yet. In the Empress's garden chamber, Jaira grasped the side of a stone bench as the ground beneath her shook violently. The floating lanterns dropped from the air, shattering like tiny stars against the floor. Palms bent under the shockwave. Guards standing near the doors froze in shock. Unsure of what had happened, Jaira turned to them, her voice sharp. "Report." But none of the guards had answers. Their pale faces showed confusion, fear, and disbelief. It had been so long since anyone attacked the Dominion that they had almost forgotten how real danger felt. A second explosion hit. This one much closer. The ornate doors tore open as smoke filled the hallway. Screams echoed down the corridor. The glow panels along the walls burst into sparks. Jaira took one step back, her heart pounding. She had never heard that sound before, but every human would have recognized it. Plasma rifles firing in tight bursts. Armored boots rushing through corridors. War cries. Chaos approaching. Her guards finally reacted by stepping away from the door. One trembled so hard he dropped his spear. Another whispered that they had to retreat to the safe bunker. The captain tried to speak, but his voice cracked. Before Jaira could order them to form a defensive line, they broke. 2 ran left, 1 dashed right. 3 bolted straight through the gardens, their armor clattering as they abandoned their post. Not one stayed. The Empress stared in stunned disbelief. Her own elite guard force, trained for generations to protect her at all costs, ran from the battle without a second thought. Her palace, the safest place in the Dominion, was falling apart around her, and she was alone, until a figure in heavy armor burst into the chamber, sliding to a stop between her and the entrance. The visor on his helmet gleamed bright gold in the smoke. "Your Majesty, move!" Marcus shouted, voice amplified through the helmet. Jyra blinked at him, still stunned. "Sergeant Hale? What is happening? Where are my guards?" "Gone," Marcus said bluntly. "Don't stand there, follow me." Another blast rocked the hall, and plasma fire sizzled past the doorway. Without hesitation, Marcus stepped in front of her, raised his rifle, and fired controlled bursts down the smoky corridor. The shots echoed through the chamber, far louder than the delicate, peaceful sounds Jyra was used to. But his stance was sure, grounded, like he had faced such chaos many times before. Something huge slammed into the outer wall, making the stone crack like ice. Marcus grabbed the Empress by the arm, not roughly, but firmly, and pulled her behind a marble pillar as debris fell around them. Jyra, breath shaking, stared into the corridor and saw what was coming. The Dravak, large, armored reptilian warriors with jagged blades, heavy rifles, and markings burned into their scales. They were known across the galaxy for their cruelty and hunger for conquest, and they were storming her palace like it was nothing more than a market stall. "How did they enter the citadel?" Jyra whispered, horrified. "They jammed your sensors and cut the outer defenses," Marcus said while adjusting his rifle. "Classic Dravak tactic. Humans learned it from them back in the day." Jyra hardly had time to process his words. Another barrage of plasma shots streaked down the corridor, exploding against the pillar. Marcus stood perfectly still, counting the shots by sound alone. He waited until they had to reload. Then he moved. He grabbed Jyra and rushed through a side passage she rarely used. Smoke filled the air, alarms blared, and the ceiling dripped molten metal from the blasts. Marcus's armor absorbed the worst of the heat, but the Empress could barely breathe as he half-guided, half-dragged her through the corridor. "Stay low," he ordered. I am not trained for this," she admitted, her voice trembling with shame. "That's fine," he replied, firing a burst at a Dravak soldier who appeared at the end of the hall. "You just stay behind me." Jyra felt the vibration of the rifle through his armor. She had never seen combat before. She had never even heard someone scream in fear. But now the palace was full of it. Servants ran for their lives. Guards stumbled into walls, trying to escape. Officers argued or froze. The citadel's beauty was disappearing in smoke and destruction. Yet the human moved with certainty, even while bleeding from a cut on his forehead. Jyra watched him as they ran. He was breathing hard, but his steps never slowed. When debris fell, he shielded her with his body. When the hallway shook, he braced himself and kept her steady. When the Dravak pushed forward, he stood between them and the Empress like a wall of steel. For the first time in her life, Jyra felt truly unprotected except for this one foreign soldier who refused to abandon her. They reached a maintenance shaft. Marcus kicked the door open and shoved it aside. "In here. This shaft leads to the lower gardens," she said breathlessly. "It is not a secure route." "Ah. It's the only untouched path left," Marcus replied. "Go." Jyra entered first, climbing down the ladder carefully. Marcus dropped after her, landing hard and blocking the top entrance with a metal bar he tore from the wall. Above them, the Dravak roared as they reached the door. Jyra felt her heartbeat pounding in her throat. "Sergeant, why did you stay? My own guards abandoned me." Marcus didn't hesitate with his answer. "Because you're my protectee. Because I'm a soldier. And because humans don't run when someone needs help." Jyra stared at him in the dim light of the shaft. His armor was dented, smeared with soot, and cracked in several places. But his posture remained strong. She realized at that moment that the human was the only reason she was still alive. And the night was far from over. Marcus climbed down the shaft after the Empress, landing with a heavy thud that shook dust from the metal walls. The small maintenance room beneath the citadel was dimly lit by a single flickering panel on the ceiling. Pipes ran along the walls, carrying warm air and water through the palace. The space smelled of metal, old oil, and faint garden soil drifting in from a vent. Jaira stepped back as Marcus pulled the metal bar into place across the hatch, locking it shut. Above them, the faint echoes of Dravik boots and shouts grew louder. They pounded on the hatch, but the bar held. For now, Marcus leaned his shoulder against the wall, catching his breath. His armor was cracked on one side from a plasma blast, and smoke marks covered his gauntlets. Jaira finally noticed how much he was bleeding. Thin lines of red slid down his cheek where a shard of crystal had cut his skin earlier. Humans looked so different when hurt. Their wounds showed clearly. "You're injured," she said softly. "I'll live," Marcus replied, checking the charge level on his rifle. "We have bigger problems." Jaira tried to steady herself, but her hands shook. She had never imagined she would find herself hiding in a maintenance shaft like a frightened servant. Her palace was supposed to be safe, secure, perfect. "How did they get inside?" she whispered again. "I don't know," Marcus answered. "But this wasn't random. Dravak raids don't happen on peaceful core worlds. Someone planned this. Someone helped them." The idea made Jaira's chest tighten. The Dominion was proud of its unity and loyalty. Betrayal was almost unthinkable. Marcus noticed her expression. "Right now we focus on surviving. We'll worry about who helped them later." He pointed to the door at the back of the room. "We move through the lower gardens. They're open, but wide. Easier to escape. Harder to trap." Jaira nodded. She didn't argue this time. Marcus pushed open the door quietly. A wave of cool, fresh air washed over them. The lower gardens stretched out in long, mossy paths, lit by low glass lamps. Floating petals drifted through the air, glowing faint green. It should have been peaceful, even beautiful, but the night sky above them was filled with smoke. Jaira covered her mouth. "My city." Marcus put a finger to his visor, signaling her to stay quiet. He scanned the area with careful steps. Rifle at the ready. They moved slowly along the path, the Empress staying close behind him. Every sound felt louder than it should. The rustle of leaves, distant explosions, the soft crunch of Marcus's boots. Jaira tried to walk silently, but her robe snagged on low branches, making soft tearing sounds. Each time, Marcus stopped and listened. Tense, as if expecting enemies around every corner. "Try to keep low," he whispered. "Stay close to the shadows." She crouched slightly, awkwardly copying him. Her posture was stiff, but she tried. They crossed the gardens until they reached a small bridge made of white stone. Water streamed beneath it, glimmering with biolights. Marcus lifted his hand suddenly, signaling Jaira to stop. Voices echoed through the air. Marcus dragged her behind a bush, crouching low. Jaira tried to hold her breath, as two Dravik soldiers walked along the path not far from them. They spoke in their harsh, growling language, their large rifles swinging at their sides. Their armor showed marks of battles and raids, nothing like the polished, ceremonial gear of Alreni guards. Jaira's heartbeat thudded loudly in her ears. She feared the Dravak could hear it. One of the soldiers stopped, tilting his head like he sensed something. Marcus froze, barely breathing. The soldier sniffed the air, snarled, and then continued walking with his companion. Their heavy footsteps faded into the distance. When it was safe, Marcus exhaled slowly. Jaira only then realized her entire body had gone stiff with fear. "That was close," Marcus whispered. "We can't risk open paths anymore." He tapped a panel on his wrist. A small map projected in front of him. Jaira leaned closer, curious. "You can see the entire palace?" she asked. "Only the basic layout," he said. "Your system restricts most human access. But I still know the general structure." He pointed to a blinking blue dot. "We need to get here. Escape tunnel. Leads toward the old transport bays. That tunnel is for emergencies," Jaira said. "Only a few people know. That's why we're heading for it," Marcus interrupted. She didn't argue. They left the path and slipped into the thicker parts of the garden, moving through ferns taller than Gyra and trees with glowing vines that lit the shadows in soft, shifting patterns. Marcus stayed low, scanning every direction. Gyra did her best to follow, stepping where he stepped. After several minutes, they reached a clearing where a large glass dome overhead had cracked during the attack. Shattered pieces lay scattered across the moss. Moonlight poured through the opening. Marcus raised his rifle suddenly. A figure limped into the clearing from the far side. An Alreni guard, one who had fled earlier. His armor was scratched, and his helmet lay half-broken in his hands. When he saw Marcus and the Empress, he froze. Your Majesty," he stammered. I did not know. Gyra stepped toward him slowly. "Why did you run?" The guard trembled. "The Dravak. They came out of nowhere. We were surrounded, I thought." "You abandoned your Empress," Marcus said sharply. "That's not fear. That's cowardice." The guard's eyes dropped in shame. Gyra looked at him, her voice soft. "Did you see how they entered the citadel?" The guard swallowed. I think the west gate was opened from the inside. The locks disengaged. The Dravak walked right through." Gyra felt cold. "Someone betrayed us." Marcus nodded grimly. "We need to move." Now. A sudden cracking sound echoed behind them. Marcus's instincts reacted faster than thought. He shoved Gyra aside and raised his rifle just as a Dravak warrior burst from the trees, roaring. Marcus fired several shots, but the enemy's armor absorbed most of them. The warrior lunged, claws outstretched. The guard screamed and ran. Marcus stood his ground. The Dravak slammed into him, knocking him backward. Marcus hit the ground hard, but his arms came up instantly, blocking a crushing blow. His rifle clattered away. The Dravak's sharp teeth snapped inches from Marcus's helmet. Marcus grunted as he wrestled with the huge creature, refusing to let its claws reach his visor. The Dravak snarled in frustration and swung a heavy punch at his side. Marcus's armor dented with the force. Gyra watched in horror, unsure what to do, but Marcus shouted at her without looking away from the enemy. "Run." She didn't. Instead, she grabbed a thick branch that had fallen from a tree during the explosion. It wasn't a weapon, but it was something. Holding it tightly, she stepped behind the Dravak, raised it with shaking hands, and struck its head with all her strength. The blow wasn't strong, but it surprised the warrior. Marcus seized the moment. He twisted sharply, rolling the Dravak over his shoulder. The creature crashed onto the moss. Marcus jumped to his feet, pulled a knife from his belt, and pressed it against the enemy's neck armor. With a fierce grunt, he jammed it into a weak spot. The Dravak went still. Gyra stared at the fallen warrior, panting. Marcus grabbed her wrist. "Never do that again," he said. His voice was stern, but not unkind. "You could have been killed." "You were about to be," she replied. Marcus paused for a moment, then nodded. "Fair enough." They didn't wait to see if more were coming. Marcus retrieved his rifle, and the two continued through the garden until they reached a tall stone wall covered in vines. "This is it," Marcus said. "There's a hidden panel. Help me look." Gyra brushed her hands over the vines until she felt a flat, smooth surface beneath them. She pressed it, and a soft chime sounded. The wall shifted, opening just enough for one person to slip through. They entered the narrow tunnel. It was dark, cold, and smelled of dust, but it felt safer than the gardens. Marcus sealed the entrance behind them. The tunnel sloped downward. Their footsteps echoed in the narrow space. Gyra stayed close to Marcus's back, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. The betrayal, the destruction, the fear, but also something else. She felt something steady and solid, something she hadn't felt since childhood. Safety, because Marcus was leading her through the darkness without slowing, without doubting, without abandoning her. "Sergeant," she said softly, "why do humans fight like this? Without fear?" Marcus didn't stop walking. "We feel fear. A lot of it. But we don't let it take control." "Why?" "Because someone has to stand and fight," he said. "If not us, Then who? Jaira walked in silence for a moment. You saved my life, she whispered. Marcus looked back at her. I'm not done yet. The tunnel opened into a wide underground chamber filled with old transport pods and emergency supplies. It was dusty, unused for years. Jaira sighed in relief, but Marcus's visor flashed red. Your Majesty, he said quietly, lifting his rifle. We're not alone. And the next danger stepped out of the shadows. Marcus slowly stepped forward, raising his rifle as the figure emerged from the shadows of the underground chamber. The room was wide and filled with silent, dust-covered transport pods and abandoned supply crates. Dim blue lights flickered along the ceiling, casting long shapes that danced with every small movement. Jaira held her breath as the figure stepped into the faint light. For a moment she feared another Dravak soldier, another monster breaking through the last quiet place they had found. But it was not a Dravak. It was an older Alreni man with thin white hair and a long dark coat. His eyes were sharp and calm, and he stood with a kind of confidence Marcus instantly disliked. He held no weapon, but Marcus didn't lower his rifle. Jaira blinked. High Advisor Renix? Marcus felt her stiffen behind him. He didn't recognize the name, but her tone told him the man was someone powerful, someone close enough to the Empress to stand in her presence without fear. Renix bowed slightly to Jaira. Your Majesty, I am relieved to see you alive. His voice was smooth, too smooth, and Marcus felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise. How did you get down here? Jaira asked, stepping out from behind Marcus. This chamber is locked to almost all palace personnel. Not to members of the High Council, Renix replied lightly. I came to assist you. Marcus immediately disliked the answer. Too simple. Too neat. Assist her how? Marcus asked, stepping slightly in front of Jaira again. Renix's eyes narrowed just a bit. Human soldier, he said slowly. You have done well guiding our Empress. But now, you should hand her protection back to her own people. Jaira looked between them. Advisor. The palace was attacked. The guards abandoned their positions. Sergeant Hale is the only one who stayed with me. Renix gave a thin smile. Even loyalty has limits. Humanity is known for courage, yes, but also for opportunistic thinking. Marcus felt the tone change. The air got colder. I'm not leaving her side, he said. And I'm not handing her to anyone until I know she's safe. Renix lifted one hand, as if calming a child. My dear Empress, he said gently. This human is dangerous. The Dravak are unpredictable. There is no proof he is not part of this chaos. Jaira stared at the advisor in shock. Sergeant Hale saved my life. Repeatedly. Marcus didn't move. His rifle stayed aimed. Renix sighed, almost sadly. I had hoped we could do this peacefully. Before Jaira could ask what he meant, a harsh metal clatter echoed from the far end of the chamber. Several armored shapes stepped into the blue light. Dravak soldiers. Marcus swore under his breath. They hadn't followed from above. Their posture was different. Their readiness was different. Their timing was too perfect. They had been waiting. Jaira gasped. Advisor, why are they here? Renix clasped his hands behind his back. Because I called them. Marcus's jaw tightened. The betrayal was clear now, heavy and cold. You opened the west gate, Marcus said quietly. Of course, Renix answered without shame. The Dominion is weak under Jaira's gentle rule. The Dravak clan offered partnership, strength, a united Dominion under my guidance. Instead of a timid Empress, Jaira's voice shook, but not with fear. You betrayed the entire Dominion. I saved it, Renix corrected. And when the Dravak place me on the throne, peace will follow. Marcus had heard enough. He fired a shot at the nearest Dravak. The plasma bolt hit its armor and forced it back a step. But the others advanced. Run! Marcus shouted at Jaira. She didn't argue. She turned and sprinted toward the old transport pods while Marcus laid down covering fire. The Dravak roared and rushed forward. Renix stepped aside calmly as the fight exploded around him. Marcus moved quickly, firing short controlled bursts, aiming for joints and weak spots. But there were too many. 3 Dravak closed in around him, One swung a heavy blade, and Marcus rolled away just in time, the blade hitting the metal floor with a shower of sparks. He fired again, hitting one soldier in the neck plates. The Dravok dropped with a growl. Another charged, slamming into Marcus with a force that sent him flying into a metal crate. Pain shot through his side. His armor cracked even more. Jaira reached the closest transport pod. She pressed her hand against the control panel, trying desperately to activate it. The old screen flickered weakly, half dead from years of disuse. "Come on," she whispered. "Please, work." Behind her, Marcus grunted as he blocked a strike with his forearm, his armor screeching in protest. He kicked the Dravok back and fired another shot, buying a few more seconds. But seconds were running out. Jaira looked back at Marcus, bleeding, bruised, but refusing to fall. She turned to the pod panel and remembered something Marcus had said earlier. Humans don't give up, so neither would she. She ripped open the side casing of the control panel, wires sparking. Her hands trembled. She wasn't an engineer, but she had studied basic palace systems. She connected 2 wires, pressed a fuse down, and the pod hummed weakly. Marcus saw the door slide open and shouted, "Jaira, stay back!" But it was too late. 3 Dravok soldiers rushed him at once. Marcus blocked one, dodged another, but the third slammed him from behind. His rifle flew from his hands and slid across the floor. He hit the ground hard, vision blurring. One Dravok lifted its weapon to strike him. Jaira screamed, "Stop!" The warriors paused. Renix stepped forward with a calm smile. "Do not kill him yet," the advisor said. "Bind him. He will make a fine symbol of our new alliance." Marcus tried to stand, but a Dravok kicked him back down. He gritted his teeth. Breath heavy. Body screaming in pain. Jaira stepped forward without thinking, placing herself between Marcus and the approaching soldiers. "Do not touch him," she said, her voice shaking but loud. "He protected me when everyone else ran. You will not harm him." Renix actually laughed. "My Empress, you are no longer in a position to give orders." Jaira lifted her chin. "Perhaps, but I am still Alreni, and I am not helpless." She reached into the pod's control panel and yanked a glowing crystal core from the machine. She turned and smashed it against the floor, and the pod's lights flared bright white. A shockwave of blue energy surged outward. The Dravok staggered back, confused. Renix shielded his eyes. Marcus felt the wave wash over him, giving him one precious moment. He used it. He lunged for the dropped rifle, grabbed it, rolled, and fired at the ceiling above the Dravok. The old metal beams groaned, then gave way. A section of the ceiling collapsed, burying 2 Dravok and blocking the entrance behind them. Dust filled the chamber. Renix shouted in anger, "Fool! You'll bring the whole floor down." "Maybe," Marcus growled, forcing himself to stand. "But not before I get her out." He reached Jaira's side, pulling her gently but urgently. "We need to move now." The transport pod was dead, but something else caught Marcus's eye, a loading ramp leading deeper underground. "Jaira, down there." They ran together, slipping into the lower passage just as more debris fell behind them. The ground shook again as surviving Dravok soldiers tried to force their way through the collapse. Renox's furious voice echoed faintly behind them. "You cannot escape! The Dravok will hunt you across this entire planet!" Marcus kept running, Jaira beside him. "He talks too much," Marcus muttered. They reached another chamber, smaller, filled with old machines and energy coils. It was dark, quiet, and forgotten. Jaira leaned against the wall, breathing hard. "Sergeant, why did you protect me again? You were hurt. You could have escaped alone." Marcus wiped blood from his brow. "I don't abandon people. You could have died." He looked at her gently. "But you didn't. That's what matters." Jaira felt a strange warmth in her chest at his words. It wasn't something she had felt in years. Trust. Before she could speak, Marcus suddenly lifted his rifle. He heard something. A distant thumping. Heavy. Steady. Jaira froze. "What is that?" she whispered. Marcus narrowed his eyes. "Something big. And it's coming this way." The Dravok commander had found them, and the final battle was about to begin. The thumping grew louder with each passing second. The floor trembled gently, dust drifting down from the ceiling as the sound approached. Marcus tightened his grip on his rifle, stepping in front of Jaira without hesitation. His armor was cracked, his movements slower than before, but his stance remained firm. Jaira felt her heartbeat rising. She had heard Dravak commanders existed, but she had never seen one. They were taller, stronger, and far more dangerous than regular soldiers. She watched Marcus, amazed by how calm he stayed even when facing something so terrifying. A shadow filled the doorway at the far end of the chamber. The Dravak commander stepped inside. He was huge, almost twice Marcus's height. Thick armor plates covered his body, each carved with symbols that showed his rank and victories. His eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, watching Marcus and the Empress, like a predator studying its prey. Marcus steadied his breathing, forcing his tired body into a ready stance. "Jaira," he whispered, "stay behind me. No matter what." She didn't argue. She just nodded. The commander let out a low, rumbling breath and stepped forward. His heavy boots echoed through the chamber. He didn't rush, didn't roar. He didn't need to. His confidence alone was a threat. Behind him, the faint voices of Dravak soldiers grew louder. They were pushing through the collapsed ceiling, trying to clear the path Renix had ordered them to take. They didn't have much time. Marcus fired first, 3 shots aimed at the commander's shoulder plating. The bolts hit, sending small sparks across the armor, but the giant barely reacted. "Great," Marcus muttered. "Thicker armor." The commander took another step, lifting a broad, heavy, staff-like weapon. Its edges pulsed with dull orange energy. Marcus had seen similar weapons before, mostly in training manuals under "Very dangerous, do not fight alone." He wished he hadn't remembered that now. Jaira stepped back against the wall, searching desperately for something she could use to help. There were metal coils, crates, and old control panels. But everything looked damaged or dead. Marcus aimed again, firing at the commander's legs, trying to slow him down. The giant lifted his staff and deflected the shot with surprising speed. The bolt ricocheted into the ceiling. The commander stepped closer, raising his weapon. Marcus barely rolled aside in time. The staff struck the floor with a heavy impact, sending a shockwave through the room. Jaira stumbled. Catching herself on a crate, Marcus pushed himself to one knee and fired again. The blast struck the commander's side, but once again, the armor absorbed it. This wasn't good. The commander swung the staff again, aiming for Marcus's chest. Marcus jumped back, but the end of the weapon clipped his shoulder, sending him spinning across the floor. He slid to a stop, groaning as pain shot through his arm. Jaira gasped and rushed toward him. Marcus held up his good hand. "Stay back." "But you're hurt," she said. "I'm fine," he insisted, though he clearly wasn't. He forced himself to stand. The commander watched him with slow interest, as if respecting a warrior who refused to stay down. Then he advanced again. Marcus fired at the ceiling lights above the commander. The bolts shattered the glass, sending glowing shards falling down. The giant shielded his face, giving Marcus a few precious seconds. "Jaira, get to the far panel," Marcus called. "There's a generator there. If you can get it working, we might overload the lights." Jaira didn't know how to fix machines well, but she moved anyway. She reached the panel and wiped dust from its surface. The interface flickered, half dead, but some lines still glowed. Behind her, Marcus threw himself into a desperate fight. The commander swung his weapon in huge arcs, forcing Marcus to dodge, roll, and shield himself with whatever crates he could reach. Marcus fired again and again, trying to hit weak points, but the armor held strong. The commander finally cornered him against a wall. He raised the staff for one strong strike, the kind that could end everything in a moment. Marcus braced himself. Jaira found a loose power cell inside the panel. Its surface was cracked, but it still held charge. She grabbed 2 live wires and pressed them to the cell. The generator sputtered, then glowed weakly. The lights above flickered. "Come on," she whispered. "Just once more." She forced the wires together. A bright burst of energy shot through the chamber. The ceiling lights flared, then exploded in a shower of sparks. The commander staggered, surprised by the sudden burst of brightness. His armor absorbed most of it, but the distraction was enough. Marcus moved. With a shout, he rammed his shoulder into the giant's leg. It was like hitting a brick wall, but it made the commander lose balance just slightly. Marcus dove forward, sliding under the giant's arm, grabbing a thick pipe lying on the floor. He swung it with all his strength at the commander's knee joint. The metal rang loudly, and the joint bent slightly. The commander grunted in pain for the first time. "Got you," Marcus muttered. The giant turned, furious. He swung the staff horizontally, and Marcus had no room to dodge. The weapon hit his side and sent him crashing into a crate. Jaira screamed, her voice echoing painfully through the chamber. Marcus coughed, struggling to push himself up. His armor was breaking apart. Each breath hurt, but he forced himself to stand anyway. The commander lifted the staff again, aiming at Jaira this time. She froze, eyes wide, unable to move. "No!" Marcus shouted. He ran, ignoring the pain in his ribs, ignoring his blurred vision, ignoring the weight of his broken armor. He threw himself between Jaira and the incoming strike. The staff slammed into his back. His armor cracked loudly. Marcus fell to one knee, gasping as his whole world flickered with pain. But Jaira was unharmed. She knelt beside him, tears forming in her eyes. "Marcus, please." He pushed her behind him gently. "I'm still here." The commander stepped forward, raising his weapon for a final strike. Jaira looked desperately around the chamber. Her eyes fell on something small. Half buried under dust, a crystalline scepter with the emblem of the royal crest. It was an old ceremonial tool used to connect to the palace's deep network systems. She grabbed it and felt a faint hum of power. It was weak, but alive. "Marcus," she called. He didn't look back. "Stay down." "No," she said. "You need to move." He didn't understand until he saw the scepter glowing in her hands. The energy inside it pulsed faintly, reacting to her presence. She held it high, pointing it toward the central control terminal. The ancient system recognized her DNA signature. A quiet tone filled the chamber. Then, a deep hum. The chamber walls lit up with old embedded lines, thin glowing roots used to direct power during emergencies. Jaira channeled the scepter's energy into them. The lights spread like veins across the stone. The commander hesitated, sensing something was wrong. "Marcus, now!" she shouted. Marcus understood. He dove aside just as a surge of bright blue energy flooded the room. It wasn't violent, it was like a wave of compressed light, a safety mechanism used to stun intruders without destroying the structure. The commander took the full blast. His armor sparked. The weapon fell from his hands. He staggered, groaning, trying to resist. Jaira held the scepter with both hands, forcing more energy through it. "Stay down," she whispered. The energy surged again. The giant finally collapsed to one knee, then to the floor, unable to stand. The chamber went silent except for the faint hum of the scepter. Jaira lowered it slowly, breathing hard. Marcus lay nearby, exhausted, barely able to keep his eyes open. "Nice trick," he said weakly. "You gave me time," she replied softly, helping him sit up. "I only finished what you started." He managed a small smile. Before they could rest, footsteps echoed behind them. Not Dravak, Oreni soldiers, real ones, armored, armed, and moving with fierce purpose. They rushed into the chamber, led by a younger captain with determined eyes. "Your Majesty," he called. "We cleared the palace. Reinforcements are everywhere. The Dravak are retreating." Jaira stood tall despite her exhaustion. "Secure the commander, and arrest High Advisor Renix. He betrayed us." The soldiers nodded and moved quickly. The captain turned to Marcus. "Sergeant Hale, you helped save the Empress and the Dominion. We owe you everything." Marcus shook his head. "Just doing my job." Jaira placed a hand on his shoulder. "No. You did far more than that." She looked at her soldiers. "From this day forward," she said clearly, "Marcus Hale is appointed as my chief protector. His courage and loyalty are an example to all." The soldiers bowed in respect. Marcus blinked. "Chief protector? You stood when everyone else ran." Jaira said. You protected me with everything you had. I trust you with my life. Marcus couldn't think of anything to say. Jaira smiled gently. Come. We have a dominion to rebuild. And we will do it together. Tren, as they walked out of the ruined chamber side by side, the dawn of a new day broke over Verithis Prime. And across the galaxy, a simple truth began to spread. Humanity never gives up. And because of one human soldier, an empire had risen again.